Welcome to the Comic Sauce Podcast, where we talk comics and comics culture. I am Henry Liu, and today I'm joined by Porfirio Rangel. Porfirio, how's it going?
It's going well, Henry. It's just really hot down here in Orange County. It's like 100 degrees still.
Oh, wow. It's pretty hot up here in the Bay Area, too. I wouldn't say 100 degrees hot, but it's up there, certainly. We are also joined by Christian Diadamo. Christian, how goes?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. I was also going to comment on the heat, but now the Porfirio mentioned that it was 100, I'm going to keep my mouth shut.
How hot is it in Pleasanton?
Like 80s. So,
Oh, that
yeah,
sounds perfect.
easy mode.
Nice.
Oh.
Okay, so the Comic Sauce Podcast can be found on Instagram and Twitter at Comic Sauce Pod. Today is Friday, April 8th, 2022. And today we're going to talk about Morbius, the Morbius movie.
Woo!
There you go.
Woo.
I sense a hint of sarcasm there, but we'll get there. But yeah, it did release a week ago, April 1st, and we're going to talk about it. A couple notes. I have to apologize because I have not seen the Morbius movie. So instead of a 3-man review team like we typically do, it's going to be a little bit more interview style where I'm going to ask you two questions about the movie and find out about this movie. And a little bit of history on Morbius in the movies. Morbius has never appeared in a movie. This is his first appearance. But there's been I guess we can say, a history of delays with Morbius in the movies. And this goes way back to the 90s because I was researching a little bit today, and apparently it was planned to have Morbius in Blade 2 way back when. And even before that, there was a cut alternate ending to Blade 1 in which you see Morbius. This was not used for the final version, but in an alternate ending, Morbius does appear, and it was planned to have him be in Blade 2. So all of that never happened, but kind of an interesting history there. And cut to more recently, this movie, the movie we're going to talk about, Morbius, was planned to release a couple years ago. And there have been many release reschedules. Crazy. Again, researching a bit, this movie was delayed a whopping 6 times. I mean, this is like unprecedented, right? So I actually took down all the dates. July 10th, 2020 was the original release date. Pushed back to July 31st, 2020. Pushed back to March 19th, 2021. Pushed back to October 8th, 2021. Pushed back to January 21st, 2022. Pushed back to January 28th, 2022. And then finally, it did come out on April 1st, 2022. Now, that, crazy pushback scheduling had everything to do with COVID. Although I'm sure part of it was the movie itself, right? I think we can consider this a somewhat troubled production, right? But that's a good sort of starting point. Like all these reschedulings, right? And I'm curious about you two. How did all that factor in terms of your expectations? Like knowing that this movie was sort of troubled and pushed back several times. How did that factor in terms of what you were expecting in this movie? You want to start, Porfirio?
Sure. One, that's obviously a bad sign when movies get pushed back. I feel like um I don't know, like there's always reshoots and stuff. Like the latest example that I could think of is New Mutants, how it got pushed back
Yeah.
many times, and then like it just like yeah, when it came out, it was just not well received. But I guess I don't know. Maybe it's also okay because then they factor in like all like these like reshoots or stuff like that. I mean, like Doctor Strange was already supposed to come out like 2 weeks ago, and we're gonna get it next month instead, because of all the reshoots and everything. So, but Morbius, I mean, like, I at the end of the day, it's a movie that nobody cared for. Like, it's a movie no one wanted. Like when it was first announced, I think me and Christian had the exact same like reaction. Like, why? Out of all the Spider-Man villains, why Morbius?
Yeah, that is a good point about how rescheduling is kind of a bad sign. Now, with the COVID era, it's not necessarily a bad sign because everything got pushed back, right?
Mhm.
So you can't fault some movies, but in general, yeah, it's not the best sign. The New Mutants example is a great example. Like that movie got pushed back a lot, and sure enough, it was a pretty shitty ass movie. Okay, what about you, Christian? What were your expectations going in?
It's funny, for the longest time, like, I think, like, Porfirio would, like, bring up this movie, probably sarcastically, of, oh, hey, there's a Morbius movie that's in production. And I think I would go, no, there isn't. Like, that's never gonna come out. That's gonna get canned. That's never going to come out. Oh yeah, Jared Leto's gonna be in it. I still don't believe that movie's happening. And this kind of went on for a long time of like, oh yeah, oh no, it's gonna happen. It's just getting pushed back. I don't think that's gonna happen. Until like I saw the trailer and I thought, oh, this is real. Like I can't remember how much I said that jokingly and how much I didn't fully believe it because pretty much what Porfirio was saying. It's like such a C-D list Spider-Man villain, um, of like, I really don't care. And like, I really didn't have any hype for it going in. I think like there was probably a little bit when I saw the trailer of like, oh hey, there's a picture of Spider-Man in that. Okay, oh hey, there's the Vulture. And then it kept getting delayed, and I thought, okay, well, it's just a COVID thing, I guess. But like, you know, I'm not hyped for it, so if I see it when I see it, I guess.
There you go. Yeah, man, the original release date was so long ago. It makes me feel that Sony was maybe trying to get a Sinister Six thing going where they would have individual Spider-Man villains in their own movie and then build their way up towards Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six, right? Possibly, like they had a Venom movie and then Morbius, and then they're talking about this Craven the Hunter movie. So it seems like that was maybe kind of the game plan there. Um, but with COVID and all the rescheduling, and then we essentially got to see a team of Spider-Man supervillains in No Way Home, right? So, I mean, all that talk of Sinister Six kind of went out the window in a way, and it made this movie even less relevant, right? I want to add too that with all the release pushbacks to this movie, we, the three of us, we ended up seeing the trailer for this movie like a zillion times, right? Like
Mhm.
every time we went to see a movie, they would show the fucking Morbius trailer, right? So that just
Mm.
kind of added to the annoying quality of this whole project, right? And we were just sick of seeing this trailer, a trailer for a movie that we weren't that hyped on in the first place, and it kept getting pushed back, and we just got less and less excited about it. So yeah, I think it just left kind of a bad taste in our mouths.
You know, it's so funny you say that because I think we did a review for 2020, you know, pre-pandemic, and I think Morbius was actually one of the movies I was looking forward to because of the trailer, because of all like the Spider-Man Easter eggs and everything. And I think you, Henry, are just like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care for this movie.
Even then, and then it just went more downhill from
Uh-huh.
there, right? And yeah, that's a good point. The marketing, it seems like everyone kind of knew that this wasn't exactly like a big time thing that a lot of people were going to want to see. But they were kind of counting on the fact that, oh, you know, do you like Spider-Man? Do you like Venom? Oh, well, you have to watch this movie because it's kind of tied in, right?
Yeah.
I think they were banking on that a little bit, and it's like the only thing they had going for it, right? Was like, oh, they have a little Spider-Man poster graffiti thing in the background, and there's a Venom mention, and you know, you see Michael Keaton in there. So like, yeah, I think it was like maybe a desperation move to draw people in. So again, I haven't seen this movie, so I'm not going to trash talk it. But you guys have seen it, so let's get into the movie itself. So before we do that, let's give the spoiler alert. If you care about Morbius spoilers, don't listen on. But if you're like me and you don't really care, or maybe you have seen the movie, please continue listening.
You're one of
Let's
the
get
few
into
who
it.
has seen it.
Yeah, exactly. One of few. So the movie itself. Yeah, let's do our pretty standard format here. Pros and cons. What did you like about this movie? Is there anything you liked about this movie? Yeah, let's start there with the pros of Morbius. Christian, what do you got?
Pass.
Oh, it's a big flat nothing. Ouch.
Honestly, it really is. Like, this movie really has nothing that I liked in it.
Wow.
I think there's might be a thing or two I thought it was like kind of okay or like
Yeah.
halfway decent. I feel like there's like a hallway scene where like a nurse is walking down a hallway and the lights aren't working correctly, and there's like a jump scare where you see a hand go around her neck and like a cutaway shot of like a vampire eating her, and like I think that's the only time I'm like, okay, that was kind of cool. That you kind of see the potential of what like a Morbius movie could have been with
Mm.
like the vampire superheroes and like, but that's like it really. Like, it sounds like a joke, but I'm like honestly not kidding here. Like, do you have anything, Porfirio?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a positive thing. I would just, it was kind of interesting. I kind of like the effects like they used with what's the actor's name? The one who was kind of like the villain. He was, I think he
Oh,
was,
Matt Smith, I think.
yeah, Matt Smith. He was a Doctor Who, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You know, he also ends up turning to like a vampire, and so there's like these like scenes throughout the film where him and Morbius like fight, and I kind of like when they go into like that vampire like flying. I thought the visuals were pretty cool on that. Um, but I just thought they were cool. I mean, I'm not gonna say like that was so awesome or anything like that. I was like, oh, that's cool. That's a cool effect. Um, but that's it. Like, yeah, like, yeah, I'm trying to think. um, yeah, like You know what I'm talking about though, right? Like like when they're flying and then there's like this like wind or whatever kind of looking visual.
Yeah, it's almost like a smoke trail
Yeah,
that
yeah.
follows them. I thought, yeah, okay, I'll give it to that little smoke trail. Like,
Like for, I don't know, maybe I was thinking more like Mortal Kombat. I was like, this looks cool, but that's it.
like, yeah, the smoke trail was like kind of cool. Like when it showed up a little bit,
uh-huh.
I thought it was like I guess a little overused. I think by the end, but I thought when I saw it and like they kind of do this like weird smoke like effect, like like smoke from Mortal Kombat actually.
Hmm.
I get, yeah, I was like, okay, that's all right.
Yeah. we
Like, and Matt Smith was okay. I think he was hammy, kind of cheesy, but like him
uh,
and yeah, go on.
no, I was gonna say I feel like Matt Smith like kind of I really want to give it to him for his acting skills. Like he really kind of worked really well with what he was given. I feel like I feel like he was like, oh, like, whatever, I'm getting paid for it. Like, let me just give my all. And I liked his acting way more than like Jared Leto's acting, I will say.
Yeah, I agree with that. Like he was playing like a hammy kind of villain, and like I was like much more invested in him, I think, than
Yeah.
Morbius.
Hmm.
You know, him and their mentor character was Jared Harris.
Oh, the doctor?
Yeah, he was like the doctor. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
I think I kind of liked it. I think it's more of like they were given nothing and they kind of made it all right.
Yeah.
They turned a -1 into a 0.
Wow. Hey, Christian, you mentioned the horror elements of the movie. That was something that I was a little curious about because I feel like there kind of isn't enough horror in superhero movies. So like when we got some horror elements in the Batman and some horror elements in the Venom movies, I thought that was kind of cool. Did this movie feel like a horror movie at all?
Hmm. What'd your take on that be, Porfirio?
I feel like if you're like 5 or 7 years old, yes. Like,
Nice.
because there were some, I guess, like creepy scenes where like Morbius's vampire face with like he's like like that kind of like the fangs and the red eyeballs and everything would like kind of like scare a little kid because it would just come out of nowhere. Like it would just kind of be like permanent, like what's that, like that one scene in Fellowship of the Ring where like Bilbo Baggins like tries to steal the ring from Frodo and then he does like that fucking scary face like for that 1 second. Like I felt it was like that, but like for me, I was just I think for us Christian, I think it was just like I I see what you're doing, and these visuals are just not working. Because one, like I said, it was only for like a second, like the whole time Morbius is trying to like fight that he doesn't want to release that vampire side of him. He wants to like hide it, so you don't really get to see like Morbius is like true figure for a certain amount of time. You only see it for like short periods of time, and I think that kind of ruins like the horror element that they were gonna go with.
Got it.
Yeah, I definitely see what you mean. It's like kind of in the trailer when he's like, "I am Venom," and his like his face changes.
Yeah,
Um, did that like yeah, they did that, and it's you're right. It is kind of like baby's first horror movie. Uh, Like, I think there was like just the hallway scene was like one jump scare. That's kind of it as far as horror. Whereas the rest just felt like very like uncanny in a way. Like, speaking of that facial transformation, like, uh, I don't know if you got found this Porphyria the same way as I did. I'm already getting into what I don't like about this movie, but like when Jared, you know, when like his like vampire senses start to kick in, and
Mhm.
like you see his eyes change, like the irises will become like ink blots,
Yeah,
and like his echolocation will happen, and his ears like wrinkle up, and they kind of look like the bottom side to a mushroom.
yeah.
I don't know, like for some reason, I don't know, did that like bother you at all? Did that like make you just feel like kind of uncomfortable and uneasy?
Like seeing that ear special effect.
Yeah, especially the ear.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think it was. Oh my gosh, I feel like there's like a certain element to it, or a certain term, but uh there's like this like thing where it's kind of like seeing those kind of visuals, or even seeing like a bunch of like holes and stuff that kind of
Oh,
give like.
tryptophobia.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I really like trip on that kind of stuff. So when I saw that, I was just kind of like, oh, like, no, I was not having it.
Yeah, same. That like it induced that like tryptophobic response in me as well. It made me feel like really uncomfortable while
Yeah,
watching it. Like I wanted to look away, but not in a good way. Like when you're watching like a really crazy or creepy horror movie and you're like, "Oh no, it's too scary. I got to look away." This just felt gross.
yeah.
It felt like, like I felt like my stomach was going to get upset from watching this movie. Like it's like, do they think this is cool? Is this like something they thought? Yeah, this is a superhero right here.
uh,
And you're watching his ears wrinkle up, and gross. Like I don't want to see that. And they show it like multiple points in the movie, and the CGI is not great either, so it looks extra uncanny.
yeah.
And like I don't know, like seeing him turn into his vampire form, I just did not enjoy in the slightest. And like I think I like kind of preferred when he went full vampire for those second scenes because
Hmm.
I didn't have to look at his fucking ears
No,
or
I
his
agree.
eyes, you
I
know?
I agree. I hated, yeah, like when he yeah, like I said, like did like the vampire thing like for a few seconds. I really liked it when they both Matt and Jared Leto, when they both went full like vampire. 'Cause then yeah, like one, like the ear thing, and then the whole facial thing. It was just like cool. Let them like just be and stay a vampire, and let them like duke it out. Like like Henry was saying earlier about like Blade. Like let it be those kind of vampires where they just stay in vampire form.
Cool. I'm glad that I'm not the only one who felt that way. I'm glad that you felt that way too. But how uncomfortable that was.
Uh-huh. And it was a stupid power.
Oh yeah, really stupid.
Okay, this is all good to know. And I'm glad I know about the horror side of it, because to me, this is a character that I don't really care a whole lot about. And um like we've been saying, like no one was really asking for this movie. But the one thing that I thought could make this movie interesting is if they made it just a straight up horror movie, a vampire movie that happens to be, in the Marvel universe, right? But it sounds like that wasn't really the case. And oh yeah, go ahead, Porfirio.
I was gonna say, I would argue though, like if it was a straight up vampire movie instead of like Morbius trying to find a cure for his vampirism, like if he embraced it, like I feel like it would have been really, really strong seeing it like in Blade or Blade 2. Like,
Mm,
because it's so funny you mentioned that earlier, because Morbius is in the Spider-Man animated series. Blade is also in the animated series, and they actually, they fight obviously because vampire hunter, but they end up teaming up together,
Mm,
you know, and so it makes sense that they're in that kind of realm. Um, but that kind of character from the animated series was someone who kind of like embraced the the genetic mutation or whatever, still trying to like find a cure.
got it. Okay. And we've already sort of gotten into the negatives of the movie, but let's officially go there. What didn't you like about this movie? Are there any particular things you want to call out?
Everything.
um,
um
Go ahead, Porfirio.
Let me see, just because I'll give Christian time to like be specific, but one thing that I will say that I didn't like was the pace of the film. Like I feel like it's like kind of one thing to have a bad storyline, but then it's a whole other thing to just do like a pace of it. For me, it just kind of felt like a video game. Like there was just no storyline, like no character development, no um it didn't feel like a movie. It felt like a video game. It's just like complete this mission. Okay, now we're going to here. Now we're going to here. And there wasn't like any like explanation how you went from A to B to C, you know? Like 1 minute they're on a ship and that's where Jared Leto becomes Morbius. The next minute they're back at the hospital and barely like nobody's like questioning what happened on the ship. It's just kind of like, well, that happened, like let's move on. And I think that's what like Jared Leto, like his character kept doing. Like there's obviously FBI police after him, and yet he keeps going back to his lab because that's where he could do his work. And just like come on, like crime 101, you never want to go to like the most like obvious place, like it was just kind of like stupid, ridiculous, like why do this. And at the end I think like even before the movie I was just kind of like, no point. After the Venom movie I was like, no point in bringing logic into this movie, just take it as it is.
I have heard a lot of negativity about the storytelling in this movie, how it just kind of doesn't make sense, and it's kind of a big mess. Um, yeah, any specifics on your end, Christian?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that same thing, like especially in the beginning of the movie, like the first half of it is like
Hmm.
extremely, I think, egregious with this problem, where like it feels like some scenes show up out of order. Like the movie starts with him like trying to capture the bats, these like super bats, and then it goes 25 years earlier, and you get this weird kind of backstory, and then it goes flashes back to him right after he gets the bats, and like it's very confusing. It feels like it's going really, really fast, but it doesn't really establish anything about these characters.
Hmm.
It and like and so it feels like it's rushing its plot along, but it feels so boring that it somehow feels like the movie's like dragging as well, weirdly enough. And like it does feel like scenes are like out of order. Like you could just take an entire scene and put it into a different spot. Um, like yeah, like it's like what Porfirio said with the way how he's on the ship and he kills all these people and just goes right back to the lab for an indefinite amount of time to learn about his powers, and you're not really sure if they know if the FBI is on his trailer, if they don't know, like because they established the FBI is looking and they find a clue, but they're not you're not 100% sure what they know yet. and um, so it feels so like jumbled, you know, and like when the movie's really supposed to be picking up, there's like this like really weird scene where like Matt Smith's character, who's now a vampire, Milo is now a vampire, goes to a club and like is like, trying to pick up girls at a club for like a good few minutes before making his kills on like guys that slight him, and like get in his face. And it's kind of like it feels so out of nowhere. And this is like a good hour and a half into the movie. This is like right before the climax. Like the big climax when he finally makes his moves to like make the final battle. And it's so out of nowhere, it like completely drags everything down. And you're like, what is the point of this scene? Like, and the cops investigate, they're like, oh, that's not Morbius. And you're kind of like, who cares at this point? Like, aren't you guys like trying to stop this vampire? Like, the cops are like on his tail and they have like these investigation scenes that go nowhere because they don't add anything to this plot, you know?
I, yeah, I agree. Like the cops were they just it was just like why include the cops? There was no point in bringing them in. Like not even for like comedic humor or anything like that. They were just like really really unnecessary because they get nowhere. And then even like stuff that they witness. I don't know if it's just because like maybe superheroes exist in this universe or whatever, but they were not questioning anything. They were just like you mentioned the hallway scene, or even like the people on the boat, and they're like, yeah, they didn't have blood in them, and they're like they just kind of were just like that's it. Like they stated the very obvious, but they weren't concerned or anything like that. It was just like yeah, it seems like I think we're dealing with a vampire, or I think so, or did they say that?
I think, yeah, because you had like the one cop, it wasn't Tyrese, who
Oh,
was,
the
I forget
uh,
the other guy, I forget his name.
oh,
Yeah, I'm looking it up. Al Madrigal,
yeah,
who
um,
was like the comedic cop.
yeah, and it was just kind of like, okay, is this like is this in the MCU or not? Because like it makes kind of sense of this like the MCU because they'd be used to seeing like weird stuff. So like but like they witness this stuff and they don't even like bat two eyes or anything like that. They're just kind of like, yeah, they have no blood. These victims have no blood. And like nobody questions it or whatever. They're just kind of like they take the obvious for what it is and then they go with it. They're like, yeah, it looks like we're dealing with a vampire. And it's just like
Okay. Yeah, let's pause there because um to me, maybe this is the biggest question of them all. Yeah, I knew this movie didn't look very good, but I was super curious about whether or not this is connected to the MCU. Because in the trailer, we saw Michael Keaton clearly as the Adrian Toomes Vulture character. There are hints to Venom and Spider-Man in the trailer. So, what's the verdict here? How much is this tied into other Marvel movies?
Uh,
I
okay. Do you want to take this one, or do you want me
yeah,
to?
I prepped for this answer.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So let's see, where do I start? I don't think it's okay, so it's not connected to the MCU, but it is connected to like the multiverse, like Sonyverse. So like Christian mentioned earlier, there's two post-credit scenes. The first post-credit scene opens like with do you remember like Doctor Strange No Way Home where like all like the sky opens up and then you see everything?
Mm-hmm.
Like so that's how the first credit scene starts with like the sky's opening up It's
Oh.
purple, and right away you remember like, oh, that's the multiverse. And Michael Keaton's character, he appears in a jail cell, and somehow he knows that he's not in his own universe. He's just he says like, oh, well, I think he says something like, oh, hopefully they have better food at this universe or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um and I think that's how the first one ends. So it's not connected to the MCU. And then do you want to talk about the second scene, or do you want me to do it?
Uh, sure, I'll take it.
Okay.
So the second end credit scene after, the first one is just Michael Keaton reappearing. So the second scene is Jared Leto's just driving a car down the countryside, and like it's late at night, and he gets out, and then you see the Vulture just fly in full costume from No Way Home, or not No Way Home, from Homecoming, Chitari Tech, and he comes and he sits down and he's like, "Hey, I don't know why I'm here, but I think it's got something to do with Spider-Man, wink wink. I think you and I could team up and do some good." And that's it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like to add a little bit more on that, like yeah, like Michael Keaton comes flying in the Vulture costume, and then he says like something yeah very similar to those lines. He's like, "Yeah, do you want to team up or like get Spider-Man?" And then like Morbius answers like intriguing, which is really weird because I don't think Morbius knows who Spider-Man is. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't it's just kind of like why would Morbius want to team up with Vulture? Like there's been like no mention of Spider-Man or whatever. Um but I had to read into this. But if you have any more to add, Christian, about what you thought about that scene, I'll wait.
Oh, I got something pretty big about what I think about the scene, but why don't you go first?
Okay. So I had to read into like what this means and everything. So one, a lot of people pointed out that it's actually not the same Vulture costume from Homecoming. It's actually way more identical to the one from Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Okay. The
Hmm.
one you see at Oscorp.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay.
So some people thought like, oh, this existed in Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man universe.
Oh,
Um,
interesting.
so Henry, I think it was you who mentioned earlier about like we had like yes, a Sinister Six movie in No Way Home, but it seems like Sony's also trying to have like again like another Sinister Six film because if we remember correctly from like like that scene where Amazing Spider-Man 2 came from, there's Doc Ock's arms, you had Green Goblin already, you have the Vulture, his costume, and now add into the mix you have Morbius, um, Venom also is established in this universe, because you have that one scene where Morbius is like, I'm Venom. And they even do reference it a few times within the film where like the cops are like, I don't think this is like San Francisco, with
Yeah.
that creepy alien dude or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then we know that they're making a Craven film, and I think in that film they also casted somebody to play Chameleon. So
Oh,
it seems
right.
it seems like Sony wants to build like their own Sinister Six film for the Sonyverse.
Mm. And a follow-up question. Did it feel like the end of the movie where you see Vulture, did it feel like the Vulture was transported to the Venom slash Morbius universe? or were they both transported from their respective universes to another universe?
No, it felt more like Vulture was transported, or I wouldn't say it felt. It was Michael Keaton's Vulture was transported from his universe to that universe, because you're like, one, he says like, oh, like this is different, like I hope the food's better here or something like that. And then
Okay.
like, and later on there's even like a news report saying like, this guy, Michael Keaton's character, he's in jail, but he was never, there's no um like background, or what's the word I'm looking for, but like
Record.
no, yeah, no record of him being in jail, so he's automatically released from jail.
Oh wow. Okay. Although you're saying maybe it's not the Vulture from the MCU, maybe it's the Vulture from the Andrew Garfield universe.
No, Michael Keaton, like it's Michael Keaton from the MCU, but just the costume, it's from Andrew Garfield's universe, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah, this is Adrian Toomes from the MCU from Homecoming. It is the same character.
Got it.
But what's also interesting is this is not the scene that you see. You know, when you saw the trailer that we saw a million times, and like he's just by an ambulance, he goes, "What's up, Doc?" That is never in the movie.
Oh, interesting.
The
There's
scene.
no, keep going, Christian.
I was just saying the scene is completely different
Hmm.
than what I think was advertised.
Going off what Christian said, there's actually a few scenes in the trailer that are not in the film.
Mm.
Hmm.
There's there's a scene where what's the newspaper company, the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, Daily Bugle.
Yeah, there's a scene in there where I think it's Morbius. He has like the newspaper, and you do see headlines of like Black Cat and I think Rhino also, like the trailer.
Right.
So those villains do exist within that universe. But then there's other scenes you don't see, like how like we talked about like that, like I'm Venom universe, and then he's like, just kidding, I'm Dr. Morbius. Like that's not in there.
Oh, it's not.
Uh-huh.
So
Like
Venom is not explicitly referenced in the movie.
He does say like I'm Venom, but
like
he ends with a different line.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Uh-huh. And then how like there's that Spider-Man like murder
Yeah.
frame. That's not in the movie either.
Oh, so there's like zero reference to Spider-Man then.
Yeah, zero
Hmm.
reference. And even it was so funny because the director, he made a comment on it saying like he didn't know about that Spider-Man frame. He says that he never filmed it or anything like that, and he didn't know that like that existed until he watched the trailer. I,
Oh, weird.
I believe that's what he said. You'd have to like double check, but I'm pretty sure that's what he said happened.
Oh, weird. So maybe Sony just like CGI'd that in there for the trailer to try to
Hmm.
drum up some interest. Yeah, it's possible.
Yeah.
And although we say that there's zero Spider-Man reference, there was some reference to him at the very end, right? Doesn't Vulture call him out or something?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, because I remember, like, for me, like, I was thinking, like, well, doesn't Doctor Strange like erase like everybody who knows Spider-Man? But then I was like, oh no, wait, he said Peter Parker. So
Right.
Michael Keaton never mentions Peter Parker by name. He always says Spider-Man because he does have like that history of fighting Spider-Man. So like after the whole like credit scene in the multiverse, like, yeah, Michael Keaton's Vulture is just like oh, um like let's get Spider-Man, let's fight, let's team up and fight Spider-Man. And
Okay.
for me, I just found it weird that Morbius is kind of like, that's an interesting proposal where like he's never, or at least yeah, it's never shown in the films, like he's never crossed paths with Spider-Man. So it's just like what what like why have interest in him, you know?
Right. Shouldn't he have been like, who's Spider-Man? Like,
Yeah,
what's that?
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. All right. Gotcha. Oh, cool. All right. That's interesting. I was not aware that there are all these tie-ins. So, um, cool. Yeah. Now that I've heard about all that, it does feel to me that they're still trying to get a villain team up going. Um, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? I mean, these Sony non-Spider-Man movies have been kind of a big mess. So I don't know how I feel about like them continuing to work towards a Sinister Six thing. And if they did, like, would it be Spider-Man versus the Sinister Six? And who would be playing Spider-Man? And I mean, just a lot of questions. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Okay. I had some random thoughts I might run by you guys. Um, with these kind of movies, oftentimes they can work better if they're really campy. I'm just thinking of the Venom movies. Um, the Venom movies are very uneven. Um, but what little I did like about them was the fact that they tended to not take themselves very seriously. And it's almost like a wink, wink. Oh, yeah, we get it. This is pretty schlocky, but let's just have fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. We're not taking this too seriously either, right? Did you get that sense here? Is this movie campy? Is there comedy? Is it serious? What's the vibe on this movie?
Uh, no, it's not really campy. I mean, like it's pretty corny. There's a lot of really like there's like quite a few really bad one-liners. I think like Tom Hardy's performance in Venom is kind of what sells it. Like the voice that he does for Venom and kind of how goofy he makes it is what works. But like Jared Leto doesn't really kind of bring that level of charisma. He plays like a very like kind of standard protagonist. They don't go, and I think like it's even though definitely kills people, it's at points in the movie. The movie goes so far out of its way to like try to tell you, oh well, he's not that bad of a guy. Like the mercenaries that he kills that we were talking about. Oh, like the cops say, like, oh, they're mercenaries. We don't give a shit about them. They're bad guys. They probably deserved it. Like it's established very early on as well that Jared Leto is so smart. He made synthetic blood, which is blue. So he drinks that instead of real blood.
Mhm.
So they show him drinking blue synthetic blood so they can get away like they can have it like oh well he's kind of a villain, he's a monster, but he's not that bad. He's a good guy. He only kills bad guys and he doesn't drink real human blood. So like they're trying I don't know, it feels like they have an idea that they're kind of that like they want to have their cake and eat it too in a way, but in a sense they feels like they have neither. It
Mhm.
doesn't really go either way of making full protagonist or full antagonist. It tries to balance it, but it achieves neither by being so in the middle of like both of those ideas.
Yeah, going off what Christian said, I think like this film thought it was good. Like it was trying to be serious and really try to keep that tone. Like I think it was really just trying to avoid like that campiness to try to maintain like that horror, like serious vibe. Like this is Morbius. He's a vampire. This is gonna be scary. and it's not scary. It's just like, yes, it is. Like Christian said, like he there's a hallway scene, there's a jump scare, there's blood and there's killing and stuff. It's just like, yeah, yeah, no, no. uh.
Wow, got it. Okay, well, so another thing that comes to mind is, okay, we have a movie that doesn't have good storytelling. It doesn't have much of any comedy. The performances aren't great. There's laundry lists of offenses here, right? But a lot of times with a superhero movie or just action movies in general, um, you can kind of forgive it if there are some cool effects and cool action scenes. How does the movie work on that level? Are there any action moments that you enjoyed, or any cool effects? It sounds like there was a few effects you guys liked, but what about that stuff?
What? Okay, so I want to hear your thoughts on this, Christian. But there was okay, so um Matt and Jared Leto, they're vampires. They're the big climax battle scene is, yeah, they fight in like the subway or something like that. And somehow Jared Leto has like this like Ant-Man power where he could like call these bats that live in the subway, and he calls them to like help him out and stuff. And then like Matt's character's like, "Oh, you can't beat me. Like, I'm undefeated. You're weak," and yada yada yada. And he's like gonna like kill Jared Leto, and then Jared Leto somehow uses like this like bat force to like push Matt's character against the wall, and then just keeps him there for like long periods of time to deliver some kind of like one liner of something like, "You can't beat me," or I don't remember what he says, but like one of those like stupid like one liners. And then like I forgot what he does to kill him. Um, but I just thought that was like really ridiculous. One, I was like, who knew there were a lot of bats in the subway? And two, I was just like, this bats using the force kind of power is really weird. This would help Batman in a future movie.
Oh man, yeah, that scene was so weird. Dude, like he even like puts his hands behind him like he's like charging up like an energy blast from Dragon
Yeah.
Ball Z or like
Yes.
a Hadouken and like puts his hands out like he's doing the Hadouken and the bats like kind of move and force to like push Matt Smith against a wall to pin him. And like that's what I was thinking. Like it looks so goofy.
Yeah.
And then like so we could like do it and like stab him with something.
Oh, was that it? I totally
I
forgot.
think he stabs him with like some sort of like knife or some sort of serum or something to get away his bat powers.
Oh yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right. Yeah. And then
Like,
he's and then he says something like, I think Matt says something like, "Oh, I thought you loved me," or "I loved you,"
I
or
was
something
your
like that.
friend,
I
man.
was
Why are
your
you doing
yeah, that
this?
that that was it. That was it. Yeah.
After I just killed like two people that are like very close to you, why are you doing this to me, bro? We're
Uh-huh.
friends.
Wow.
And like, yeah, the fight scenes are really bad. Like, um, they like yeah it's like kind of hard to see what's going on in that last fight scene. I think they overdo that like smoke like effect. And like there's a scene at the very like I think when he first gets his powers, they do this a lot where it feels like this like weird Zack Snyder ripoff where you see a lot of like slow motion where like he's moving so fast and then he'll like start a motion and then he'll wisp and like and appear somewhere else and slash a guy and then appear somewhere else and it kind of seems like yeah, it seems very Zack Snyder knockoff,
Hmm.
but like
Mm-hmm.
harder to see. You know,
Mm-hmm.
everything's really, really dark. So they can have the slashing moments, of course, without showing any blood. Because it's PG-13. That's an R-rated thing. And so yeah, not even the action was enjoyable. Like the character designs didn't look very good either. And like the CGI looked kind of plasticky. So it's like they're not even like the effects weren't in action weren't even all that entertaining.
There was one scene that tell me what you think, Christian. There was a scene where Morbius has an assistant. I forgot what her name is, but she is a victim to Matt's vampire character, and Morbius like goes to like go save her, but it's kind of too late. But I think he gives her like a little bit of her blood, and I don't know what he was thinking, but then like right afterwards he like drinks her blood. And the thing is with like Morbius's powers is he doesn't get like the full extent of his powers unless he drinks humans' blood. Like the artificial blood that Christian was talking about earlier. Like it like satisfies his need from totally going like full on Morbius, but um to use like his full vampire potential, he has to drink like actual human blood. So then he like bites her and drinks her blood. But then later on, um, like before the movie ends, she like awakens as like a vampire. And I was like, is this what Morbius wanted? Did he want to turn to a vampire, or did like was this total coincidental, or I was just really, really kind of confused about what happened.
Yeah, that is kind of confusing because you're not because he's like a genetic vampire and not the classic like Dracula type character. It's hard to see what the extent of his powers is. You know, like don't you need the specific serum that he took in order
Hmm.
to get the vampire powers or something that he like created in a lab instead of just the blood, you know, uh, of Morbius, like you would have in like your classic Dracula story, you know, and like it's like there's a lot of questions to that, and you almost wonder it's like do they just put that just because they know they couldn't like kill her because it's PG-13, you can't have too much blood and too much death here. So, well, she's fine. She's the love interest, so she's a vampire too now. Like, it's almost like that was also their like sequel bait, you know, moment.
Hmm. Yeah.
That was like, ooh, gotta see what's next. She's a vampire now.
So
Mm-hmm.
so Henry can watch that in the sequel.
Yeah.
Yay.
We're giving you good stuff here, Henry.
Indeed. Okay. So clearly you guys thought this movie was bad. But
Mm.
exactly how bad? Let's rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. What would you rate Morbius? How about Porfirio? You want to start here?
So it was like five, like really, really, really bad, or it's like one, like bad. Like,
uh, so the way we've been rating them, 5 is as good as it gets for a movie, and 1 is the worst possible rating you could give a movie.
oof, yeah, one probably.
The lowest.
Yeah, I wasn't say -1, but you said one's the lowest, so.
Only because you can't go lower.
Not until you watch this movie.
How about you, Christian? What would you rate this one?
Oh yes, this one gets a 1. This is a hard one
A
too.
hard one.
Like, yeah,
Damn.
like I said, there's nothing to like here. The characters are bland. The story makes no sense. The effects and the actions suck. And like it fails on every level. This is Catwoman tier This is suicide. I'd rather watch Suicide Squad again than
I'd
we'll have to
rather
watch this again.
I'd rather watch Fantastic Four again.
Same here. This is bottom of the barrel.
Wow. Wow, that's something else, man. Yeah, I did have a final question to throw out. I think you guys kind of answered it, but my thought about Morbius and just the Sony verse Marvel movies in general was that they're kind of cranking out the shittiest superhero content out there right now. Yeah, you know, DC movies have been much maligned over the years, but this whole Sony versus Marvel stuff is kind of stepping up in terms of shitty superhero movies, right? Um, Now, my question was, how does the Morbius movie compare to the two Venom movies? It sounds like this one's probably the worst of the bunch, but just yeah, any thoughts about these three movies in particular?
It follows a very similar structure to the first Venom movie, you
Mhm.
know, but it doesn't have like Tom Hardy to really like carry it, you know.
Yeah,
Like,
like I feel like sorry, I didn't mean to cut you, Christian.
no, it was pretty much done. Go for it.
I feel like Tom Hardy was the perfect role for Venom. Like he really does make the character. Jared Leto just does not make for like a convincing Morpheus. Like I think, you know, for these like Spider-Man villain films to exist, you have to have Spider-Man. They can't exist on its own. Like you know, like there are certain characters, I guess, that can exist without like the main superhero, like you know, like Joker, or even like I wouldn't mind seeing like a Riddler movie from like the Batman movie that just came out, you know. But they just have to be like really well written and just not be like corny, you know. Otherwise, yeah, just include the hero if you're gonna go for like that corny aspect. But um yeah, Jared Leto, he was just his method acting did not pay off for this movie.
Well, that's a solid take about Spider-Man because I was thinking the exact same thing. How you can't make a Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man, right?
Mhm.
Because look at Sony, they seem to do just fine when they have Spider-Man in their Spider-Man movies. Look at Into the Spider-Verse, you look at No Way Home, great fucking movies. But yeah, with Venom and now with Morbius, it just seems like the key element is missing, right? And you know, that's not to say you can't make a decent Spider-Man villain movie, um, but number one, I think it's a tough task, and number two, you kind of have to take a totally different approach. I mean, look at the Joker movie, um, very original, a totally fresh take on the character, and um, that was not a Batman movie, right? That was a Joker movie, right? So yeah, I think with Venom and from what I'm hearing with Morbius, they were really trying to follow some sort of superhero formula, and um, they weren't trying to do something very fresh and new. So, yeah.
Okay, I have a question for both of you. Obviously, this film was not well liked from none of us, and Henry hasn't even seen the movie. um, what do you think could have happened to like sell you into watching the movie? Like,
Like,
what do you think? Like, in terms of Morbius itself, like, what do you think? Like, they should have done to like whether it be like maybe if they did this storyline or maybe if they focused on this or the visuals are better on this, like what do you think would have sold you on Morbius? Because obviously, like like turning something from nothing is possible within the superhero genre, like Guardians in the Galaxy and even like Shazam or Deadpool, whatever. Like, what do you think like could have been done to just like look forward to or someone enjoyed this film?
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because that was sort of floating around in my mind too. And it sort of ties into my horror question earlier. Yeah, in my mind, I think the only way you could make this work was to was if you made it a hard R horror movie. You know, don't make it a superhero movie. Make it a horror movie. Make it rated R. Make it ultra violent. Um, don't make it for comic nerds. Make it for horror fans. That might be kind of cool. That would be sort of intriguing to me. Um, Clearly, that's not the route they took. But yeah, to me, I think that would be the only way that it could have worked. It still would have been a pretty tough task, I think. But you're talking about a character that is not a household name, and it's again a Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man. Like there's so much going against it. That's the one thing I think that possibly could have worked. Hard R horror.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, I think like because I was thinking like, okay, maybe this film, maybe there's something there that like is just waiting to get out, you know? So I think like one answer to that I guess like I know this might be an easy answer, but Blade. Talk about Blade earlier. I think one is that Blade would have really sold this movie a lot better if you take out like the cops and replace it with Blade. But that's a different movie. But I think yeah, hard R horror movie, and I think probably like take out the villain in the movie because I don't think Milo's even a comic book character. I think they just made him for the movie. Um, and instead just take out him and make Morbius the villain himself. You know, make him a sympathetic villain, but he is bloodthirsty. He does kill people. And like it could be a little more like really great classic horror movie is The Fly, with Jeff Goldblum. Great John Carpenter movie about a scientist who is trying to do something but ends up becoming something completely morbid by the end of the movie.
Mhm.
And you have just um, his partner who in this case her name Martine, the character from this. I had to look it up because everyone's really forgettable here, and just make her the main character and have it follow her and her trying to help cure Morbius, but Morbius may be too far gone, you know, and essentially follow more of like a horror plot like that than to try to shove in like a superhero villain that he has to fight.
Mhm.
Like I think that sounds infinitely more interesting than what we got, or just a straight
Yeah.
up Blade movie. You guys mentioned at the beginning of the cast, like I would way rather see a Blade movie with Morbius
Yeah.
than a movie
Totally.
just about Morbius.
Yeah.
I know. Henry pitched in the beginning already. I was like, that sounds way better.
Right. Yeah. Interesting too how you guys had issues with how they it sounds like they really tried to make Morbius a sympathetic character, right? It's like, oh, he's not that bad. He makes his own blood, and he only kills if he has to. It's only bad people. Like that's something that might have been cool to see too, where they make Morbius totally unsympathetic. that was a cool aspect of the Joker movie. Like that movie really tested you. Like they made the character relatable. He seemed like an everyday kind of person, but he does all this terrible shit in the movie, particularly like the second half, right? um and it's never like, oh, he's not that bad of a guy, like, he's okay. um it's really like he just makes terrible decisions, and he's really a terrible person when it comes down to it, right? So that would have been cool to see, right? Like a Morbius movie that's like violent and horror filled, but also, guy that maybe is totally unlikable. He's just like a bloodthirsty killer, and it just completely like tests you. Yeah, maybe there's aspects to him that's relatable, where it's a scientist who tries to do something wrong, tries to do something right, and it goes horribly wrong. We can kind of relate to that, but then ultimately he's just like completely not redeemable. um yeah, like when you guys were describing how the movie was trying so hard to make you want to root for him, like I know how that goes. Like how when that goes wrong, it just feels really terrible. Like it's just, it doesn't work at all, right? So another aspect that maybe the movie should have gone with. Okay, with that, we can wrap up the episode. This is Farewell from Henry, Porfirio, and Christian.